Lon Chaney shall not die. The story of the man with 1,000 faces. That is actually that title goes hard. Actually, the man with 1,000 faces. That goes hard by Dark Corners Reviews. Yeah, we're gonna look at this. I don't know much, honestly, as usual. And to be fair, the stuff that I did know, I kind of forgot already. So this will be a nice refresher. All I know is that this is an amazing actor. That is all I know.
In 1925, Super Studio MGM claimed they had more stars than there were in the heavens and wheeled them out for promotional film The MGM.
I don't know if they actually had had this many stars. Is this tough, chat? I'm not gonna lie, the man with more than 1,000 faces is definitely a title that goes hard. No doubt about it. That does go hard. That's crazy.
MGM Studio Tour. But one star isn't playing ball. The man talking with his back to the camera may not have had the best known face in the lineup, but that was only because the public knew him by so many. This is Lon Chaney. Despite having made over 150 films, Chaney is now largely remembered for two extraordinary performances. For a long time,
he was in The Hunchback. He was the Hunchback in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1923. Director was Worsley. Horrible name. Elise de Worsley.
Hollywood Law said that Universal production head Irving Thalberg had the idea of making The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Chaney in the title role. But research done by Chaney biographer Michael F. Blake showed that Chaney himself had been planning this for years and probably had Quasimodo's makeup in his mind long before the cameras turned. That makeup, based closely on the description in Victor Hugo's book, was, like all Chaney's makeups, applied by the actor himself. It took 3 hours and was capped by a 20-pound plaster hump. Chaney also designed a leather harness which held him in a stooped position and meant that he needed a special chair in which to rest.
Bro did all of it himself? That's interesting. That's very interesting. So he did like the makeup himself. He did the hunch, the back himself, the costume parts. That's very interesting. And he's a good actor, so he's good. He's good in multiple things. Not bad.
Between takes. Although he was doubled by Joe Bonomo and Harvey Parry in the climbing sequences, Chaney's performance is still a stunningly physical one. Clambering over the cathedral like a gargoyle come to life. Throwing himself body and soul into the role. Inevitably, it's the makeup that hits you first. And much has been made of what Chaney
legit better than most CGI nowadays. Isn't that crazy? Damn, man really said, fine, I'll do it myself. And so he did. The makeup looks good. That does look good. Like I said, better than some CGI nowadays.
Endured in playing the part. But in an epic movie, what stays with you are the small moments of Chaney's performance. His love for Esmeralda. His chagrin at being rejected. And the simple joy of ringing the great cathedral bells. No matter how extraordinary were the creations he wrought from the converted toolbox that housed his makeup, Chaney's acting always shone through, eliciting sympathy for the neglected and unloved characters he portrayed. Chaney's other great role of this era.
What honestly surprises me is also like the facial expressions, right? With the that ton of makeup, right? You'd expect that the face were to be like somewhat in a way very stiff, but he's still has a very, how do I say this, flexible face. Is that the word you would say? That's really good. Not bad. There's like actually a lot of Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now that you mention it, there's a lot of movies. Kind of. Is this a Hunchback movie? Yep. 1923.
era arguably deserves
Hunchback, not the Phantom of the Opera, 1925, from director Rupert Julian. Okay, interesting.
to be unloved. Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, is a killer and a madman, as well as being cursed with appalling ugliness. Revealed in one of the most famous shots in cinema. Chaney's makeup had been a closely guarded secret, his face blanked out in publicity pictures. But beneath the monstrosity...
Ooh, they really made this like a secret to get people into the movie. Nowadays, you couldn't pull that off because something somewhere would get leaked, right? So there's that. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. For a second, I was dead as confused by them not talking, but then I remember why. Yeah, these are silent movies, right? In the 20s. Is this how you look like? Nah, not that bad. Not that bad. Like a 5 out of 10 kind of thing, but not that bad. I probably am lying because I have a really bad assessment of how I look, so or someone would be offended. That could be. Nah, it would actually work right away because we're in the era of ugly people in cinema, I guess.
We glimpse the Phantom's tortured soul, allowing us to wonder if the Phantom's madness is a consequence of how he has been tormented on account of his appearance. The film's success solidified Chaney's box office reputation and secured his longevity amongst cult film fans, but it also pigeonholed him for future generations as a horror star. Chaney was never a horror actor. He was a
Tell to the Marines, 1927, George W. Hill. Okay. I'm doing okay. Okay. Hope you're doing better soon with your tiredness and sore throat.
character actor, and in or out of makeup, character came first. Speaking to Theatre magazine in 1927, he said, "A man's face reveals much that is in his heart and mind. I attempt to show this by the makeup I use. The makeup is merely the prologue."
I mean, right, it goes a lot, right? Not just the makeup, right, but also the facial expressions. Apparently also like the you can tell by somebody's face how they've been doing for most of their life. You can see, for example, like if somebody smiles a lot, you can see that around the mouth, right? With how the skin looks. If somebody's like skeptic a lot, you can see that on their forehead, that kind of stuff. So kind of true, yes.
Leonardus Frank Chaney was born in Colorado Springs on...
That is a crazy name. The first name is actually crazy. That's rather interesting. Is bro in 300? That's crazy.
April 1st, 1883, the second son of Frank and Emma Chaney. Both his parents were deaf. Emma from birth, Frank due to a childhood bout of typhoid fever. And so, from an early age, Lon learned to express himself without speech. When Lon was in 4th grade, Emma Chaney was stricken with inflammatory rheumatism, which would leave her bedridden for the next 3 years. While his father and elder brother went out to work,
Mama Chaney did not do too well. That's sad. Didn't know that kind of need. Yeah, it's really interesting.
young Lon dropped out of school to care for his mother. Every day he entertained her, told her stories, kept her up to date with local news, not just with sign language, but with pantomime, gesture.
Laugh, Clown, Laugh, 1928, Herbert Brennan. Interesting. Laugh, Clown, Laugh. That's an interesting name. Born on April 1st is unfortunate. Damn, he shares the same birthday as Logan Paul. Yeah, but the difference is Logan Paul was an April Fool's joke that would continue for decades. This one was a gift.
And facial expression, unknowingly honing the skills that would make him such a unique talent. When elder brother John Chaney got a job at the local opera house as a stagehand, he brought his younger brother along, working as a prop boy for 25 cents a night. Lon would remain a supporter and member of stagehands' unions until his death. From here, he worked his way up and made his acting debut in 1902 in The Little Tycoon. It is in a review for this show that we first find Leonardis referred to by his more familiar name. Lon Chaney provoked laughter whenever he appeared on the stage, and his dancing was welcomed with loud acclamations of approval. It's a far cry from the Lon Chaney of Hunchback and Phantom. During the 20s, Chaney's gift for comedy and music was largely confined to behind the scenes, joking around with Wallace Beery or entertaining the cast and crew on the set of Tell It.
Yeah, but that makes sense, right? Obviously, at first, right? You're not gonna, I think, like, as an actor, singer, whatever, right? Whatever you're doing, even artist, right? I think, like, in your first initial years, nothing much is happening, right? You're just gonna get, like, some small stuff, some small gigs and all that stuff. But, like, overall, you wouldn't really, like, it wouldn't go crazy. It wouldn't go super hard for the beginning. And I feel like a lot of actors also, like, hit their peak very late in their career.
The Marines. The only comedy film he made at his peak was also one of the few horror films he made, playing a mad scientist in 1925's The Monster, also one of his worst films of this period. For the next 10 years, Chaney toured as a theatre actor, largely in musical comedy. He married Claver Creighton, and their son, Creighton Tull Chaney, arrived swiftly after. But these were lean years, and the marriage ended in acrimonious separation and divorce, during which Lon won full custody of Creighton. Chaney was badly in need of work.
Rare W for men in family court? Okay, interesting.
And turned to that bottom-of-the-barrel employment that many actors were forced into. The exact date Chaney entered the movies working as an extra is unknown. It would be nice to think that this was him in Suspense, a seminal thriller directed by Lois Weber, but the consensus is not. His first credited role was in the 1913 slapstick comedy Poor Jake's Demise, a film long thought lost until part of it was rediscovered in 2006 in a private collection. This lesser-known part of Chaney's career is also the most productive.
The Scarlet Car. Interesting. Huh, so he had, like, his few little moments, then basically disappeared for a little bit, and then returned. Talk about a comeback.
He joined the company of husband and wife filmmaking team Joseph DeGrasse and Ida Mae Park, with whom he made 64 shorts between 1914 and 1918, playing everything from a hunchbacked fisherman to a sensationalist reporter. He worked with Alan Dwan, one of cinema's most...
So he already, how do you say this? His wife was abusive is what I could find. Oh, that's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate for him. That was very unfortunate for him and his son. Interesting though. So he already had the hunchback role in his blood, if you will. Also Discord and Harmony. Discord and Harmony don't go well together. Moving on.
Prolific directors. He even wrote and directed a handful of films himself, although sadly none of these survive. And in 1915 he married Hazel Hastings, with whom he would spend the rest of his life. Though some of these early performances retain more than a hint of broad theatricality, Chaney was learning his craft and adapting his skills to this new medium. Despite the hectic work rate, he strove to make each role a unique character, and as early as 1916 was featured...
Yeah, I cannot keep up with that beard. Sag, Discord. Shh, we don't talk about Discord and the e-kittens on there that you can rent. Careful. Horrible idea.
In Motion Picture Weekly as Master of Makeup. During During this period, Chaney was under contract to Universal, but by 1918 he was feeling undervalued. When his request for a raise was turned down, he quit the studio and went freelance, eventually landing the bad guy role of Haim Bosom in Riddle Gone. Directed by and starring William S. Hart, the biggest cowboy star of the era, this film, of which only fragments remain, gave Chaney his most significant role to date. The role of Stoop Connors the following year in The Wicked Darling was important for another reason.
Interesting, The Wicked Darling. Okay, so one of his best roles is there's not much left of it. That's unfortunate. I've reviewed most of these. You nerd! But good for you. Lock in.
The film was directed by Todd Browning and was the start of a 10-year and 10-film relationship. After Outside the Law for Universal, in which Chaney played a dual role as gangster Black Mike Silver and R. Wing, they embarked on a series of outlandish melodramas for MGM.
Wait, he played an Asian man? They could have not found an Asian man? Then again, this is the 20s, so it kind of makes sense.
Starting in 1925 with The Unholy Three. Chaney and Browning shared a taste for the macabre, and Browning would often come up with a character for Chaney, then base a story around it. In London After Midnight, Chaney plays a detective who dresses up as a vampire, a makeup that has entered into popular culture despite the film being lost. Judging by Browning's 1935 remake, Mark of the Vampire,
Vampire. Todd Browning, or however you say it. He mostly is remembered for making the original Dracula movie. Not bad. Interesting.
being lost may be the best thing for the film's reputation. It's also credited with inspiring a murder. Robert Williams, a London carpenter, claimed visions of Chaney's vampire sent him into a fit in which he killed an Irish housemaid. A plotline that...
Huh? What are we using as justification for murder here? What on earth is going on? What? That's crazy. I had visions from Lon Chaney's vampire, so I had to obliterate this housemaid. It wasn't my fault. Crazy.
would have suited a Browning film. In The Unknown, one of their best collaborations, the character of Alonzo the Armless has his own arms cut off to hide his distinctive double thumb, an extraordinary act of hate-fueled masochism that required a leg double for Chaney. And in 1926's The Blackbird, Chaney plays the criminal of the title who hides from the police by pretending to be his own twin brother, a paralysed priest called the Bishop. The scene in which he goes to fetch himself, then conducts an argument through the door, is perhaps the most unbelievable.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting. That is so interesting. He really put in that. You can tell, right, that there's a lot of effort put into it. This man has a unique charm. Very true. People back then just be saying anything. Guy really just went. This guy I saw in a movie told me to do it in a vision. Kinda, I guess. I don't know. It sent him into a fit of rage or something like that. I don't know. Interesting.
In a series of films that frequently stretches credulity, but that never stopped Chaney from delivering a believable performance. Silent film acting required a level of exaggeration to put the point across, but by this stage in his career, Chaney had become a master at making this exaggeration seem natural, here making a deal with gangster West End Bertie. When he sees Bertie with Fifi, the girl he loves, his jealousy is clear, but not histrionic. While as the Bishop, he is forced to hide that same jealousy for fear of discovery. Chaney's ability to say much while saying nothing was not just a matter of facial expression. As he watches Fifi's show, even his posture shows his eager infatuation. And this brief encounter between the Blackbird and his ex-wife is wonderfully underplayed, but leaves us in no doubt as to their relationship. With plot lines that frequently spilled over into the ludicrous, the Browning films showcase how adept Chaney was at walking the fine line between expressive and over-the-top. Chaney...
You can tell, but the face expressions hit hard, for sure. Browning and Lon Chaney is like Martin Scorsese. And Robert De Niro, they collab in so many movies. Interesting, very interesting.
He said, "Grotesqueries do not attract me. It is vivid characterizations for which I strive." The best of his collaborations with Browning managed to be both. While meeting Browning would pay off in time, the big event for Chaney in 1919 was playing the Frog in George Lone Tucker's The Miracle Man. The film is now mostly lost, but one scene that does remain is that in which Chaney's bogus cripple pretends to be cured by a faith healer. It is one of the finest demonstrations of how Chaney could use his body to sell a scene to an audience.
This man stood up, can walk, he stood up. Time to shut off. Interesting. Yeah, it's a... I think the art in silent movies is facial and facial and body language very much. You could tell them The Miracle Man I really want to watch, but I can't. Well, because it unfortunately does not exist fully.
Miracle Man was the biggest hit of Chaney's career so far, but he was about to outdo it playing another cripple, and this time he would be the lead. The role of crime lord Blizzard in The Penalty required little makeup, but was a test of another kind, as the character has lost both his legs due to a careless surgeon. Chaney's legs were bound back so tightly that he had to have the feeling massaged back into them between takes.
Whoa! Yo! I was already saying, like, without CGI and nothing, how did they remove this man's legs? They put them back. Doesn't this hurt after a while? He probably needed quite a few breaks in between, right? That had to be the case. That is... okay, that's crazy.
But, thanks to a specially designed costume and weeks of practicing on the weighted stumps at home, Chaney's performance completely convinces, and director Wallace Worsley, who would later helm Hunchback, goes out of his way to showcase the actor's physical strength, particularly in this shot. Referenced by Martin Scorsese in the film Hugo. But, however great a physical achievement it is, once again what impresses is Chaney's acting. Blizzard is a symphony of rage, tainted with hurt when he is laughed at, tinged with fear when it seems his plan to walk again may not come off. And, as so often with the characters Chaney portrayed, there is sadness at the unfairness of his lot.
Bro, that's gotta hurt. That has to hurt. Is his niche playing disabled people? I guess more so freaks of society, quote unquote. That is very much, that you can tell that's very much something he does in a lot of movies. Like playing roles of people with abnormalities. But that's gotta hurt. I mean, look, he's literally sitting on the chair here, right? With like the stump directly like facing away, like it would be actual stumps. That's gotta hurt.
In Blizzard, Chaney gives us one of the most memorable of his 1,000 faces, without any need for grease paint. Though it has its subtler moments, like Blizzard teasing a drug addict, this is essentially a melodrama, complete with trapdoors, secret passages, and a plot about leg transplants. But even this, Chaney manages to make sinister. Embrace...
What an admirable pair of legs. Bro almost became who he was playing with that one. I just can't imagine how that felt. That, like, if he literally had to the feeling massaged back, right? You have to look at this, right? they were bound back so far that blood flow didn't properly work anymore, right? Because if your feelings are gone, that means the blood flow is like cooked, right? That's got to do some damage over prolonged time.
Its successes ignore the irritatingly weak undercover policewoman, and you're left with an enjoyable thriller with a blistering central performance. Both in terms of its physical demands and the intensity Chaney projects, The Penalty seems a training ground for films to come. Another starring role in 1922's The Trap was less notable, but marks the first time that, in promotional material, Chaney was referred to as the Man of 1,000 Faces. The year also saw him in A Blind Bar.
Holy aura. Bruce aura farming. It's also like nowadays we do all of this with the CGI. Back then you literally had to put some physical work into it. Damn.
A rare horror in which he plays the dual role of mad scientist and ape man. And as Fagin in Oliver Twist. Made by Jackie Coogan Productions and largely based around the child star who was hot off Chaplin's The Kid, it sees Chaney once again using his whole body to create a character and conveying story without words. With these and other roles, Chaney had established himself as a star, but was yet to break into the top rank. All that changed when he returned to Universal to play the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Certainly, this was his biggest picture. 19 acres of sets, 750 crew, over 2,000 extras, and every lamp in the studio and more besides for 2 months of night shooting. But the scale of it could not swamp what mattered. Variety described Chaney's performance. His misshapen figure, from the hump on his back to the deadened eye on his face, cannot stand off his acting, nor his acrobatics, nor his general work of excellence throughout the film. Which is all the more remarkable since they described the film itself as a 2-hour nightmare, murderous, hideous, and repulsive. Hunchback may not.
So they glaze him, right? They say like great, everything, like his performance is amazing. See, I think they're not really calling it like a bad movie, right? They call it that movie in a positive way, nightmarish. Like, I don't know how to put it, right? Oh, there was a lot of horses. That was a lot of horses. Hunt.
Not be a masterpiece. Worsley was more at home with smaller productions, and the staging of some scenes is woefully undramatic. But Chaney's performance saves it. He had gone from character actor to that rarest of things, the character actor star, in demand with all the major studios. And the biggest of the bunch was about to come calling. MGM.
Wait, the lion back then existed already? Crazy. If only The Rock could do this, I highly doubt that he'll ever be. He plays literally the same roles over and over. Every time a man is in the jungle with his bald head, doing bald head things. Anyways, so you're basically telling me this movie was very much carried by Lon Chaney.
Studios was the result of a massive merger and had inherited such unfinished projects.
Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. Yeah, okay, 1925. By Fred Niblo, or the director's Fred Niblo. Interestingly enough, right? I only know one Ben-Hur. Only one. With Charles Heston. I think, is that how you say it? Right? That one I know. I like that one a lot. Obviously, I like the Ten Commandments as well, where he plays that role. And Planet of the Apes. That's also one I really like.
Projects as Ben-Hur and Erich von Stroheim's Greed. But for their first wholly in-house production, Irving Thalberg, who had left Universal to head up production of the new company, wanted something not just profitable, but prestigious. They hired the great Swedish director Victor Sjöström, known in the US as Seaström, to direct 1924's He Who Gets Slapped, starring Lon Chaney.
I was like, wait a minute, I know this name. Erich von Stroheim. Yeah, exactly. I was like, for a second, I needed to think, like, wait a minute, is that who I think it is? That is who I think it is. The story of a broken heart from the famous stage success with Lon Chaney, Norma Shearer, John Gilbert Tully Marshall. I'm not gonna read all these names, but yeah. He who gets slapped. Save this poor man.
Alongside future stars John Gilbert and Norma Shearer. From the start, this was unlike anything Chaney had done before. Sjöström's European sensibility favouring imagery and symbolism. Chaney plays scientist Paul Beaumont, whose work is stolen by his benefactor, who then mockingly slaps him in front of his colleagues. The gesture is then repeated by his unfaithful wife. Beaumont retreats from the world, taking this degradation and feeding it into a new life as a clown whose act revolves around getting slapped. By the
That is a crazy plot. Man gets slapped twice. Needed career change. This is actually his highest rated movie on Letterboxd. Okay, interesting. That's crazy. Crazy plot. Man gets slapped. Immediate change of career. Right away. I'm gonna go in hiding. I got slapped. I'm gonna become a clown. So this is what it feels like to be dancing as the clown in front of the queen, huh? With the one gift.
circus's entire troupe as the audience roars with laughter. The act culminates with his heart removed from his chest and buried. Though the plot contains such melodramatic standards as unrequited love and revenge by lion, this central motif of a man repeatedly reenacting his own abasement.
Revenge by lion. Gets slapped, becomes clown. I have a plan. I need to be slapped, and then I will become clown. As I should.
Gives the film its soul. Chaney was coached by professional clown George Davis, seen here in The Phantom of the Opera. But there's more to this performance than a mastery of the Pratt.
Did he just say professional clown? Wait, he was trained to do this by a politician? I didn't know.
Sjöström called Chaney the finest actor in the history of the screen, and his performance here is far more restrained than in Hunchback, showing the clown channeling his hatred into a rictus grin or manic laughter, but also convincing in the quiet moments. This is a film of transitions and hidden emotions. No one was more adept at showing emotion through makeup than Lon Chaney, and nowhere is it more poignant than when he declares his love for Shearer's Consuela and she assumes he is joking. He Who Gets Slapped feels like a minor turning point for Chaney. As the films he made became more grounded in the real world, so his performances became increasingly naturalistic. At the end of the film, the world keeps turning as the clown is unceremoniously disposed of.
Gets slapped, becomes clown, gets yoinked off the planet. Wonderful, amazing. I too would use a revenge lion if I could, but unfortunately my government isn't that based enough. Sadly, mine isn't. I know that a guy further down the street once owned a tiger. Yes, a literal tiger. I'm not kidding. And then further back, we even have like a place where there's ostriches. So there's that.
Chaney would work with Sjöström again the following year in The Tower of Lies, the last film he made in which he was not top billed. And he would play a clown again 4 years later in Laugh, Clown, Laugh, Chaney's personal favourite of all his films. Both would be made for MGM, where the actor spent his peak years, but for now...
Was that just Friedrich Merz right there? You know? Pinocchio with the long nose?
Now he was still a free agent, and there would be one last film for Universal. The Phantom of the Opera was an unashamed attempt to cash in on the success of Hunchback, and again, Universal pushed the boat out. The opera set was the first film set built of concrete and steel and still stands today. 250 dancers were hired for the ballet sequences, and the film would even include Technicolor scenes using the new two-color process. But while Chaney had enjoyed a good working relationship with Wallace Worsley, he did not get on with Phantom's director, Rupert Julian. Julian favoured a far more theatrical performance than Chaney was willing to deliver, and relations between them deteriorated to the point that cameraman Charles Van Enger was forced to act as a go-between. Van Enger later recalled, "Julian would explain to me what he wanted Lon to do, and then I'd go over to Lon and tell him what Julian had said. Then Lon would say to tell him to go to hell." The original...
I want the more theatrical approach. No. I gotta tell you that homie comes over. This guy wants you to do something, and the bro's response is, "Yeah, buddy, tell him he should go to hell." Crazy laugh, poke a laugh. Happy?
Ending had the Phantom redeemed by Christine's kiss in his dying moments, but this was reshot on Carl Laemmle's orders after an unsuccessful preview. The replacement sequence, which allows the Phantom to remain a magnificent monster to the end, is second only to the unmasking, as the Phantom careens through Paris in a stolen carriage, before being trapped on the river's edge. A final moment of defiance. Then the mob takes him. Like Hunchback, The Phantom got mixed reviews, Variety saying, "It is impossible to believe that there are a majority of picturegoers who prefer this revolting sort of tale on the screen." But once again, Chaney's performance was acclaimed even by the movie's detractors.
Makes sense. Lon Chaney also called him a dictator. That's crazy. Go to hell, you're a dictator. Must have gone pretty hard. Phantom of the Opera is now considered a classic. Obviously, I'm not surprised.
Despite his successes at Universal and as a freelancer, for the remainder of his career, Chaney would make his home at MGM. And a home is what it seems to have been to him. According to his Unholy 3 co-star Harry Earls, at Christmas he gave cards and gift certificates to the office staff and crew members, and when a studio electrician's mother couldn't afford an operation, Chaney paid for it. Todd Browning said, "There wasn't a thing he wouldn't turn his hand to. He'd help move props, lights, or even make up the extras." For one particular extra, Chaney did more, giving him career advice along with a lift in his car, saying, "The trick in this business is to do something totally different from the rest, so they'll take notice of you." It was advice that the young Boris Karloff certainly followed.
I mean, that makes sense, right? I think that goes for anything really that you want to excel at. You gotta do something different to be noticed, right? Music, you gotta do something different. Art, you gotta do something different, right? Acting, social media, right? You gotta do something different to be noted, to be noticed.
His regular collaborations with Browning were now in full swing, but, as ever, there was more to Chaney's career. Tell It to the Marines is a Chaney film that seldom gets talked about, but it's one of his finest performances. The story of a Marine sergeant, hard as nails but with a heart of gold, taking a raw recruit under his wing, has now become a stock one, from Sands of Iwo Jima to Heartbreak Ridge. But that takes nothing away from the film or from Chaney's perfectly realised Sergeant O'Hara. From the first moment we see him, we know who O'Hara is. The way he walks, the way he gestures, even the way he stands informs his character. Chaney's use of pantomime to put character across was never more effective and never more natural, whether he is dealing with jerkish new recruit Skeet or chatting to unrequited love interest Nora. thanks to Chaney's dedicated preparation, O'Hara seems completely at home in his surroundings. Despite the absence of makeup, outside of a little blood, or the grotesque, this is arguably the defining Lon Chaney film. The story is not...
That just goes to show how good he's at. This movie's turning 100 this year. Interesting, right? This just goes to show how well how good he is at this, right? That just goes to show. I mean, consider this, right? He does not, right? It just shows that he doesn't need the makeup to do incredible acting, right? He can do it without that, regardless.
Not that different to something like Hunchback, a pretty girl favouring the young, handsome hero, while Chaney is left to dream. But it's more subtle, and the realism of the settings make...
At least he's got a dog. Man's best friend. At least he's got a doggo.
The story all the more touching. Particularly in the scene where Nora, not knowing how O'Hara feels about her, asks his advice. And the sergeant speaks up for Skeet. And so O'Hara is left alone. This constant failure to get the girl, even when not disfigured or evil, was...
Or this could also just right? He could have just gave bad advice and then she would have, it would have just continued. But sometimes you gotta let go what you love most. So that's also something that this movie shows, I guess.
Key to Chaney's popularity with male audiences. At the end, as O'Hara watches the happy couple walk away, Chaney's face tells a story without any need for words. It is the perfectly underplayed summation of all the more melodramatic rejections that Chaney characters had undergone. Tell It to the Marines was hugely popular with the Marine Corps.
Real. Very real. Oh my god, it's just you never getting the girl. I will throw you into the sun and make a Krokorok leather bag out of you. How dare you, you chunky walking meter.
For itself, and Chaney was made a lifetime honorary member. It was also the actor's most profitable film for MGM, and along with other dramatic performances in Mr. Wu and While the City Sleeps, it took him to the peak of his stardom. But despite being voted most popular male star in 1928 and 29, Chaney had strong ideas about fans, telling Motion Picture Magazine, "Vanity is a personal parasite that must be fed until it is gorged and renders its victim a failure." He seldom gave interviews, signed autographs, or attended premieres, and gave no commercial endorsements. His fan mail went straight into the trash can outside his dressing room, which he referred to as his high-priced secretary. The only mail that escaped this and was actually answered was that which came from prisons. Chaney was a staunch advocate of prison reform and even wrote on the subject of rehabilitation for Island Lantern magazine, published by McNeil Island Penitentiary. The last two Browning-Chaney collaborations are numbered amongst their best and worst. West of Zanzibar gave Chaney by far the most complex of his crippled characters. While Blizzard had projected his rage, the seething emotions of Froso remain largely beneath the surface as the story drags him through devastation to melancholic contemplation of what he has lost. While he was always a fine actor, Chaney's most subtle performances came at the latter end of his career, even amongst the...
Okay, take some fan mail. Nah. I wouldn't need to set up a mailbox, though soon I probably have no other choice anyways. Regardless. I keep the fan art that you guys all make, right? The fan art that I got, right? I keep it all. It's mine. It's mine now.
Heightened emotions of a Browning melodrama. Where East is East, by contrast, is weakly plotted, with Chaney oddly underused next to an animated Loopy Velez. It is a muted conclusion to the long association between star and director. By now, the talkie revolution was underway, but Chaney refused to make the change, instead making one more silent film, Thunder, another film of which only fragments survive, featuring a simple but effective old man makeup. Was Chaney afraid that his pantomimic acting might not hold up in the talkies? Did he fear, as many did, that talking pictures would kill the universal language of silent cinema? Or could there have been a more
I wonder, huh? I never forget that I was once poor, says Lon Chaney. Interesting. Oh boy, I wonder what's in this package. Kaboom. Yeah, over. I know a German YouTube streamer who got sent literal shit. I mean that. Literal shit. So they actually got shit twice. So that's pretty interesting. And one unloaded the shit into a KFC bucket. Regardless, anyways. To a different one. Charlie Chaplin didn't like talking movies either. Well, yeah, obviously, because it's essentially a replacement for quote unquote replacement for something you love, so that makes sense, right? I'm pretty sure that regular artists, right, people that like people that draw probably weren't that how do you say it, fond of photos, right? I could imagine, right? Just like photographers weren't probably that fond when the average Joe could make his just make photos with like his phone, right? I am pretty sure.
personal reason for his intransigence? Chaney's parents were both dead, but he remained a supporter of deaf-mute charities. When Frank and Emma Chaney had come to see their son's films, they were on the same footing as everyone else in the audience. The talkies changed that. Did Chaney feel some sense of betrayal? We'll never know. But he was conspicuously absent from the Hollywood Review of 1929, which featured all MGM's other stars, except for Greta Garbo. In the event, MGM still found a way to include Chaney. In 1930, following some contract wrangling, Chaney finally signed up for his first talkie, a remake of The Unholy Three.
Well, friends, that's all there is to life. Just a little laugh, a little tear.
True to form, Chaney learned ventriloquism for the role.
Well, that's very fine, Tommy. That's very fine indeed.
And his vocal performance was so impressive that he signed an affidavit swearing all the voices the character performed.
What is this man not good at? What is this dude not good at? What on earth? Huh?
In the movie were his own.
Come right in, Robbie.
The film's success pointed to a whole new chapter in Chaney's career.
The man of 100 golden voices.
A slate of films was already lined up, and the studio was eager to usher its star into his next talkie. But Chaney knew something they did not. We can't be certain, but it's likely that Chaney found out he was suffering from lung cancer following a bout of pneumonia during the making of Thunder.
That's very unfortunate to suffer from that. Sorry, interrupted. Yeah, interesting. This he's gonna pass away because of lung cancer, huh? How many minutes are left? No way. This was a 33-minute video.
Though the prognosis was bleak, he told no one, suffering in silence through the making of The Unholy Three. When filming wrapped, Chaney secretly underwent radium treatments. Then he and Hazel headed to the couple's cabin outside Big Pine, California, Chaney's favourite place in the world. But this retreat was cut short. Lon's condition swiftly...
Interesting. It's even worse knowing that movie he got cancer from. Wait, did he participate in a movie where he was like around like chemicals or anything, or like a lot of like smoke, whatever, radiation?
Deteriorated, and he checked into St. Vincent's Hospital on the 20th of August. By this point, talking had become difficult for the actor, and in a strange irony, he was forced back to the sign language he had learnt as a child. It was now impossible to keep the news of his illness out of the press. When the story broke, the MGM switchboard was jammed with over 1,000 calls from people offering to donate blood. 5 days after he was admitted, Lon Chaney slipped into a coma. He died in the early hours of August 26, 1930. He was 47 years old.
Bro, he wasn't even that old. Rest in peace, my love. That's crazy. He wasn't even that old, not even 50.
He was buried on the Thursday after his death, and as his casket was lowered, every studio in Hollywood stopped production to observe a minute's silence. While he made many good films, there's a strong case to be made that Lon Chaney never made a truly great one. So, why is he still so well known when other silent stars have fallen from memory? Partly it's because, while some of those stars seem almost interchangeable, Chaney was unique. But the deciding factor is probably the perception and misconception of him being a horror actor. Universal's horror cycle started in 1931 with Dracula, a film which the studio had hoped to get Chaney to star in, though it never seems to have been a realistic possibility. The studio's makeup guru Jack Pierce, seen here making up Lon's son Creighton after his name change, was heavily influenced by Chaney, and Chaney's 2 best remembered roles were for Universal. The connection was reinforced by Forrest J. Ackerman's groundbreaking fan magazine, Famous Monsters of Filmland. From 1958 to 1983, the magazine celebrated horror and never stopped paying tribute to the classics, regularly including pictures of Chaney emblazoned with the legend, "Lon Chaney shall not die." So, although it is important not to remember Chaney as a horror star, without horror fans, we might not remember him at all. Uniquely amongst film stars, most Chaney fans become fans without having seen a film. It's the still pictures that are so enticing. How are these all the same man? This makes him much more accessible than most silent stars, in an era when the films are seldom shown. I myself became interested in Chaney through a copy of Robert Anderson's book, Faces, Forms, Films, The Artistry of Lon Chaney, which belonged to my grandfather. But, logical though all this is, there is just something about Lon Chaney. Something about the characters he played, life's losers who never got the girl. Something about the way he played them seems to reach out from the screen and touch us. The makeup is all very well, but that ability to connect with his audience, that was Chaney's real gift.
Well, and that's the end of the video. Very interesting. Well, that was one of the, I guess, very few movie videos I did in fact, or actor videos that I did in fact enjoy. Yeah, he's great. He's great. Not only right the makeup stuff, but the just like I said, the ability to convey emotions through the face and body language is very interesting. Like he excelled at that. But he was also good at other stuff. Apparently writing, right? Even with voices, right? Even with like speaking and such. Not bad at all. Crazy.